Story 1. Room 19. The patient who never left. In 2004, Briarwood Community Hospital shut down overnight after a string of unexplained patient deaths and staff disappearances. The building was sealed, condemned, and eventually forgotten. Another abandoned facility swallowed by vines and rumor. But in 2023, urban explorers live streaming a tour of the hospital discovered something impossible in the psychiatric wing. Room 19 was locked from the inside. A patient wristband was lying on the floor, and the name printed on it belonged to a woman who died there 19 years ago. When authorities forced the door open, they found the room completely empty, except for a fresh message on the wall, written in blood. Discharge denied. What happened in room 19 was never supposed to be uncovered. But someone, or something, inside that hospital has been waiting for the truth to come back. The building stood like a forgotten skeleton in the middle of the woods, stripped of its name, stripped of its purpose, stripped of the life it once held. Briarwood Community Hospital had been abandoned for nearly 2 decades, yet even in its hollow state, it radiated the old authority of a place where the sick once begged for tomorrow and the dying whispered their final fears. Its windows were either smashed open or boarded tight, like the building couldn't decide whether it wanted to scream or stay silent. The live stream began on a fog-drenched October night, October 14, 2023, to be exact, when 3 urban explorers decided to test a myth almost everyone in the county had heard growing up. No one leaves room 19. The camera shook slightly as the trio approached the main entrance, their flashlights slicing through the fog in narrow beams. The channel belonged to a 24-year-old named Logan Briggs, known online as Rustcrawler. His videos usually featured abandoned malls, shuttered theme parks, or forgotten farmhouses eaten alive by ivy. But this stream was different. This was the building that locals refused to enter. The place even police avoided at night. A building wrapped in a history of whispers, lawsuits, missing staff, and patient charts mysteriously erased. Logan's voice was tinged with a mix of excitement and nerves as he whispered to the 18,342 viewers watching live. "Alright guys, we made it. Briarwood Hospital. This place has been locked for 19 years. Tonight we're going inside." Behind him stood his 2 friends. Hannah Wells, a 22-year-old photography student who thrived on thrill-seeking and had an eye for capturing decay. Marcus Hale, 26, ex-military, the rational one of the group who joined only to keep these 2 idiots alive. Hannah turned her camera to the audience and whispered dramatically, "This hospital closed after 5 unexplained deaths in less than 3 months. Staff vanished. Patients vanished. The psychiatric ward was sealed overnight. And room 19, Marcus cut her off. "Stop. Don't start with the ghost crap." But viewers were already spamming the chat. "Room 19 or we riot. If you hear anything, run. Check the records room. Ask about patient 19. The main entrance was sealed with warped plywood. Graffiti screamed warnings. "Don't open. She's still inside." 19 remembers. Discharge denied. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Teenagers, probably." Hannah shook her head. "Teenagers don't bring blood-red paint into the woods." Logan steadied the camera. "Alright, we're doing this." Marcus jammed a crowbar into the wooden slats. With groaning snaps and splintering cracks, the boards gave way. Cold air rushed out of the hospital like the breath of something waking up. The audience count jumped to 22,000. The lobby. The inside smelled of mold, old urine, and something bitter, like chemicals gone bad. Dust swirled in the air as their flashlights swept the lobby. An overturned wheelchair lay in the corner. Papers littered the floor like fallen leaves. The reception desk was covered in layers of grime, and the big sign that once read, "Welcome to Briarwood Community Hospital," had only one word left visible. "Welcome. Briarwood Hospital." The rest had peeled off like dead skin. Logan moved the camera slowly. "Guys, thousands of people passed through this place. Imagine how many stories died here." The chat exploded again. "Get to the psych wing. Room 19, room 19, room 19. Show us the patient records." Hannah whispered, I don't like how cold it is in here. Marcus frowned. Cold? I'm sweating. That made Hannah go silent. Because she wasn't wrong. Her breath was fogging. Marcus wasn't. The dark hallway. The group moved past the nurse's station, past collapsed ceiling tiles, past rusted stretchers that looked like they hadn't been touched since 2004. A gurney sat dead center in the hallway. Straps undone. Sheets missing. As if someone had left it in a hurry. We should check the east wing first, Marcus muttered. Records, surgery, patient rooms. Psych ward, Logan corrected. That's why we're here. Marcus shot him a look. That's where the worst stuff happened. That's where the staff started going missing. Hannah raised her flashlight. Wasn't that where they found that doctor? The one who locked himself inside. Dr. Hawthorne, Logan said. He was the psych supervisor. They found him in his office with all the windows covered. Nobody ever confirmed the cause of death. Marcus grunted. Suicide. They just didn't release details. But Hannah shook her head. They found him kneeling. Not hanging. Not shot. Not cut. Just kneeling. Like he froze in place. The camera caught Marcus' expression. He didn't believe it, but the story unsettled him. The trio walked deeper into the building. And that's when they saw it. The isolation wing door. A steel security door loomed at the end of the hallway. Massive. Reinforced. Covered in rust. A faded sign above it read, Psychiatric and Isolation Wing. Authorized staff only. Beneath it, scrawled in thick black paint, Termbit, Marcus muttered. We could still do the surgical suites instead. But Logan was already zooming in the camera. The door wasn't locked in the old schematics, he said. It was controlled by a keypad. And indeed, the keypad was smashed to pieces. Someone had knocked it off entirely, deliberately. Marcus shoved the door. Nothing. He shoved harder. Metal groaned. Dust rained. And the door slid open with a shriek. A wave of cold swept out, so sudden Hannah gasped. Jesus, she whispered. Did they refrigerate psych patients or something? Marcus' skin prickled. No. That's impossible. But the cold air kept rolling out. Not like air from a cold room. More like air from a freezer. Logan stepped through, camera steady. Guys, we're in the psych wing. Inside, the air was different. Heavier. Still, every footstep echoed down the long hallway lined with patient rooms. Some doors hung open, swaying slightly with the draft. Others were shut tight, names still taped to them. Hannah walked to one door marked Bell, but the tape had curled, turning the name unreadable. She peeked inside. A single bed. A single chair. A single message scratched into the wall. Someone else is in my room. She jumped back. Marcus grabbed her arm. That's creepier than usual, but still explainable. Logan murmured, 27,000 viewers. They moved on. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. By the time they reached the center of the wing, Hannah's flashlight began flickering. Marcus stopped walking. His breath was visible now too. All three of us feel that? The temperature dropped even further. Logan swallowed hard. Because suddenly, everything went silent. No wind. No creaking. No settling of the building. Silence so absolute it pressed against their ears. Then Marcus said two words. There it is. The door was at the very end of the hallway. A narrow metal door. Paint peeling. Hinges rusted. A wooden sign nailed across it read, Room 19, do not open. But someone had crossed out, do not, with deep gouges. To now read, open. Chat exploded. Open it now. This is it. GWF. The legend is real. Logan whispered, we found it. Hannah's voice trembled. Why does it feel colder here? Marcus touched the handle. It's freezing, he said. Like, actually freezing. He pulled away, shaking his hand. Logan kept filming. Okay guys, we're doing it. Room 19. The first sign of her. Marcus gripped the handle again. Winced. Turned it. The door opened an inch. And every light in the hallway flickered violently. Hannah took a step back. Logan, don't. Logan pushed the door wider. The camera captured something lying on the floor inside. A patient wristband. Fresh white plastic. Not aged. Not yellowed. Not dusty. Perfectly clean. Letters printed clearly. Catherine Howell. DOB, 1981. Patient ID, 0019. ADM, August 2004. Hannah gasped. No, 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 no. Marcus whispered, that can't be real. Because everyone in town knew that name. Catherine Howell was one of the psychiatric patients who died the night the hospital shut down. August 19, 2004. Her death certificate was public record. She had been dead for 19 years. Yet her wristband was lying in a room sealed for 19 years. Logan zoomed in. Guys, this isn't fake. The inside of room 19. They pushed the door open fully. The room was pitch black. Not normal darkness, thick darkness, like ink poured over the walls. Hannah's flashlight flickered violently. Marcus stepped forward slowly, breath shaking. Something's wrong with this place. Logan aimed the camera inside. For a moment, the viewers saw nothing. A shape. A figure. Sitting in the corner. Not moving. Hannah screamed. Marcus lunged, grabbing Logan's jacket. Back up, now. The figure was human-sized. Knees pulled tight to its chest. Head bowed. But when the flashlight hit it fully, it dissolved. Not disappeared. Dissolved. Like smoke. Like breath in winter air. And the cold surged so violently they all gasped in unison. Logan stumbled backward. What the hell was that? Marcus shouted, we're leaving. Now. Hannah scrambled away. But the room wasn't done. Because as they turned to run, the camera caught one more thing inside room 19. A message on the wall. Fresh, wet, not paint, blood. Words dripping slowly. Discharge denied. The scream. Logan spun to film the others. And Hannah wasn't behind them anymore. Her flashlight lay on the floor. Still on. Still flickering. Marcus froze. Hannah. Silence. Hannah. Logan's heart hammered. Oh God, where is she? He moved the camera wildly across the hallway. Nothing. A scream. A raw, primal, blood-freezing scream. Coming from behind a nearby door. Room 17. Marcus ran toward it. Logan followed, breath shaking, voice breaking. Hannah, we're coming. Marcus yanked the door open. And the screaming stopped instantly. The room was empty. Completely. Except for one thing. Hannah's camera. Sitting in the middle of the floor. Still recording. Marcus picked it up with trembling hands. And on its screen, one sentence had been written with a finger, fogged across the lens. She won't let her go. Logan stared. Who won't let her go? A cold wind blew down the hallway. Lights flickered. The temperature dropped again. And a whisper, soft, female, impossibly close, drifted behind them. 19. Detective Lena Ward had been inside abandoned hospitals before, but Briarwood felt different. The walls didn't just stand in silence, they listened. Every crack, every peeling layer of paint, seemed like an exposed nerve waiting to twitch. And room 19, now sealed behind yellow tape, pulsed in the back of her mind like a living thing. The message scrawled in blood, discharge denied, was still fresh on her gloves, still burning in the back of her skull. She had left the scene physically, but the room hadn't left her. As she drove back toward the county precinct, rain began tapping the roof of her cruiser like impatient fingers. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a call from Captain Rhodes. She put him on speaker. Ward, Rhodes said, voice tight. You're back. Driving in. Just left Briarwood. But, because we've got a problem. Lena rubbed her temple. Define problem. Rhodes exhaled loudly. The hospital's security contractor is claiming nothing in room 19 should have been accessible. They said the psychiatric wing was welded shut 6 months ago. Lena blinked. Welded? As in permanently sealed? Yes. But the live streamers walked straight through. That's the problem. Lena swallowed. Someone unsealed it. Someone, Rhodes confirmed, with access, tools, and a reason. The wipers squeaked across her windshield. Rhodes lowered his voice. "And one more thing, you need to see this for yourself when you get in." "What?" "The name on that patient wristband you found. The woman who supposedly died 19 years ago?" "Yeah," Rhodes said slowly. "Her medical records were updated 2 days ago." Lena felt her breath stall. "Updated by who?" she whispered. "That's what you're going to find out." The call ended. Lena stared at the wet road, pulse thudding in her ears. The patient was supposed to be dead. The wing was supposed to be sealed. The room was supposed to be untouched for decades. So why was it opening itself back up now? The file they didn't want found. The precinct's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Lena pushed through the double doors of record storage. The air smelled of dust, cardboard, and secrets nobody had bothered to clean. Mrs. Hargreaves, the oldest records clerk in the building, possibly in the state, sat behind her counter with reading glasses hanging from her neck and a mug that read retirement was yesterday. Without looking up, she said, "If you're here for the divorce files, third cabinet on the left." Lena exhaled. "Not divorce. Medical." At that, the woman's eyes rose, and her pencil froze mid-scribble. "You're working the Briarwood thing," she murmured. Word traveled fast in small departments. "I need the psychiatric admission logs from 2004, Lena said. Mrs. Hargreaves didn't ask why. Her silence spoke volumes. Instead, she pushed her chair back with a grunt and began moving through the aisles like a ghost that had memorized the maze. She returned with a single thin folder. "Too thin." Lena frowned. "That's it?" Mrs. Hargreaves nodded. Most files were transferred to state archives after the hospital shut down. This is all they left behind. Lena opened the folder. At the top sat a name she had already memorized. Tormik, patient 19B. Admitted, March 18, 2004. Diagnosis, acute psychosis, persistent visual hallucinations. Status, deceased, April 6, 2004. Cause of death, cardiac arrest during restraint protocol. Lena stiffened. Restraint protocol, she read aloud. What does that mean? Mrs. Hargreaves leaned closer. Means they held her down. Lena's jaw tightened. She died during it? Seems that way. There were only 4 more pages, and 3 were mundane. Admission signatures, medication schedule, staff shift notes. But the 4th page, Lena froze. It was an incident report, a torn, faded photocopy of a form written in frantic handwriting, as if the writer were trying to finish before something caught them. She read it silently. Incident date, April 6, 2004. Patient, Sir Tormik. Reporting staff, name redacted. Summary, patient refused discharge. Repeatedly insisted she was not the one scheduled to leave. Violently resisted. Confessed belief someone else was assigned to her room improperly. Claimed he would come back if she left. Final recorded statement. If you discharge me, you release him, not me. The rest of the page was blacked out. Every single line. What the hell? Lena whispered. Mrs. Hargreaves tapped the blacked out section. Someone didn't want that story told. Someone at the hospital? Lenest. Or someone after, the clerk said quietly. Big places hide big mistakes. Lena closed the folder. Thank you, she said. Be careful, detective, Mrs. Hargreaves said. That hospital killed its secrets before it killed its patients. The man who made the call. Lena walked out into the hallway, heart pounding, only for her phone to buzz again. Unknown caller. She answered. Detective Ward, a soft voice whispered. You should have left that room alone. Lena froze. Who is this? You opened the wrong door. The voice trembled, like someone speaking from a cold basement. You think the message on the wall was written for you, he continued. But it wasn't. Room 19 was never her prison. Lena's throat tightened. Who are you talking about? Sarah Cormick? The man exhaled shakily. No, I'm talking about him. The line crackled, then went dead. Lena lowered the phone slowly, like it was suddenly heavier. The night shift survivor. Rhodes' office was dim, The only light coming from a desk lamp leaning over a spread of Briarwood maps, admission lists, and patient photographs. A large black and white photo hung in the center. Briarwood Community Hospital, Psychiatric Wing, 2003 staff photo. 21 faces. Most smiling. All exhausted. All unaware of what was coming. Rhodes pointed to a man on the far right, a tall figure with dark circles under his eyes and a clipboard in his hand. His name's Patrick Dole, Rhodes said. Night nurse. Worked the psychiatric wing for 9 years. Still alive. Leanest. Alive and somewhere. Rhodes grimaced. He left town after the shutdown. But we found an address. Lena nodded. Why him? Because he was Sarah Cormack's primary nurse the night she died. Rhodes tapped the photo. And because he filed an internal complaint 2 days before that. Lena's eyes widened. What kind of complaint? Rhodes slid a single printed email across the desk. The header read, Urgent, breach of wing security, 19B. Lena read silently. Dr. Halden refuses to acknowledge unauthorized access to room 19. Patient Cormack is correct. Someone is entering her room at night. I heard voices. I saw the door open on its own. If administration does not intervene, we will lose control of the entire wing. This is not a patient issue. This is a safety issue. No response from administration. No follow-up. 3 days later, the hospital was shut down. Lena's pulse throbbed. He knew something was wrong. Yup, Rhodes said. And now, 20 years later, he's hiding. Lena grabbed her coat. Let's pay him a visit. Rhodes shook his head. You're going alone. He doesn't talk to cops unless they arrive quietly. Too paranoid. Too shaken. Shaken by what? Leanest. According to neighbors? Rhodes paused. He still hears things at night. The house at the edge of town. Patrick Dole's address was a rundown rental on the far side of Briar County. A sagging fence. A porch strewn with old newspapers. Curtains taped shut. It looked like a house that had given up. Lena stepped onto the porch, boots crunching glass. The air around the house felt wrong. Heavy, like it was holding its breath. She knocked. Nothing. She knocked again. A faint rustle inside. Then a low voice through the door. Go away. Lena leaned closer. Mr. Dole? My name is Detective Lena Ward. I need to talk to you about Briarwood. No. No hospital talk. His voice trembled. That place is dead. So is Sarah Cormack, Lena said. Except her medical file was updated 2 days ago. Silence. Total silence. Locks turning. One latch. Another. A chain sliding off. The door creaked open 2 inches. A single bloodshot eye stared through the gap. You shouldn't have gone into room 19, Dole whispered. Lena swallowed. Why? He opened the door fully. Patrick Dole looked like a man trapped inside his own shadow. Pale, unshaven, hands shaking constantly as if electricity lived under his skin. He backed up, allowing her inside. The interior was dark, cluttered, and filled with radios and old monitors stacked on shelves. Some hummed. Some flickered with static. Some emitted faint whispers. Lena stepped inside. Mr. Dole. Patrick, he said weakly. Patrick, she corrected. I need the truth. Why did you report unauthorized access to room 19? Patrick's eyes darted to the floor. Because someone was going into her room at night. Who? He shook his head slowly. Violently. No. No, you don't understand. His voice cracked like splitting wood. It wasn't a who. Lena went still. Patrick pointed at an old radio on the table. It was switched on, nothing but white noise. She told us, he whispered. Sarah told us that the room wasn't meant for her. That it belonged to something else. Lena lowered her voice. Something? Patrick's eyes welled with tears. You heard the message on the wall, didn't you? Lena nodded. Discharge denied. Patrick's breath hitched. He won't let anyone leave. Who is he, Patrick? Patrick shook his head again, trembling. Lena stepped closer, voice firm but gentle. Tell me what Sarah meant when she said, If you discharge me, you release him. Patrick slowly lifted his shaking hand and pointed toward a far corner of the room, toward a large, dusty patient file box. Inside it, one folder had a label so faded it was almost white. Lena crossed the room and pulled it out. The name on the file was almost invisible, but when she tilted it under the lamplight, her blood ran cold. Patient 19A. Before Sarah Cormick, there had been someone else. Someone assigned to the same room. So who was 19A? She whispered. Patrick closed his eyes. Not this, he whispered. Is. Lena's heart thudded painfully. Where is he now? Patrick's voice broke into a whisper so soft she barely heard it. He never left the room. A moment of dead silence. A loud burst of static erupted from every radio in the house. Patrick's head snapped toward them in terror. No, not now. The lights flickered. The air turned icy. And through the static, one distorted voice rose. A voice that did not sound human. Detective Ward. Lena stepped back, pulse racing. The voice continued, dripping like wet gravel. You opened the door. The static cut off. The house fell silent. Patrick stood trembling uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. He knows you. Lena's breath hitched. Who? Patrick looked at her with a face drained of hope. Patient 19A. The nurse who never clocked out, Detective Mara Linton, had spent enough time in abandoned places to know when a building felt dead and when it didn't. Briarwood Community Hospital didn't feel dead. It felt like it was listening. Even with the police generators humming outside and crime scene lights pushing pale beams down the mold-coated hallways, the air inside seemed charged, like static waiting to snap. Every sound echoed too long, as if the walls were holding on to noise instead of releasing it. Mara walked ahead of the forensics team, boots crunching across shattered ceiling tiles, room 19's door still open behind her like a wound. The message on the wall, written in what looked like human blood, discharge denied, was being photographed behind her. She could still smell the sharp metallic tang of it, fresh, impossibly fresh. But she kept walking, eyes scanning the decaying psychiatric wing. Detective, one of the crime techs called from behind her. We're running the blood sample now. It's human. We should have an ID by tonight. Good, Mara said, though her voice didn't carry the confidence she wished it did. The sooner we know whose it is, the better. But she already feared the answer. She reached the nurse's station, a half-circle desk coated in dust and peeling papers. The plastic laminate was buckled with water rot. A swivel chair lay overturned, its wheels rusted into frozen stillness. Except one thing didn't fit. Mara bent down. A footprint. Fresh foot. It wasn't just in the dust. Dust had fallen around it, meaning the print had been made recently. Too recently. She stood slowly, scanning the hall behind her. Everyone else was still back in room 19. The footprint wasn't one of theirs. Mara swallowed. Great. This place just keeps getting friendlier. She snapped her gloves tighter and stepped behind the counter, rifling through the stacks of old charts. Most of them were brittle, the ink fading into amber stains. But then she saw something that made her stop. A clipboard. Not dusty. Not curled. She pulled it out. A patient chart, printed on crisp white paper. Name, Fiona Hale. Date of admission, March 11, 2004. Status, admitted. Assigned room, 19. Attending nurse, Ren. Mara felt her breath hitch. Fiona Hale, she whispered. The name echoed too clearly. A rookie officer walking past the station heard her. Detective? You all right? She forced her expression neutral. Yeah. Just found something. But she wasn't fine. Fiona Hale wasn't a stranger. She was Mara's older sister. And she'd been dead for 19 years. They had never recovered Fiona's body. Only her chart, her personal effects, and a series of unsigned notes requesting increased observation for erratic nighttime behavior. Mara still remembered reading that file at age 14, sitting on the cold metal chair in Briarwood's waiting room after the hospital had already shut down. Their mother had refused to come. Their father hadn't cared enough. Mara had come alone. It was the day she decided she would become a detective. She never imagined Briarwood would come back for her. She turned the clipboard over, expecting dust or residue to betray it as some planted prop. Instead, she found a handwritten note clipped to the back. A single sentence. She never left. Her throat clenched. Detective Ryan Torres approached her from the hallway, stepping over a collapsed four-pole. "Mara, we've got an issue." "Bigger than a fresh patient chart from 2004? She asked tightly. "Yes." He handed her a mask, a hospital mask, old style. The paper yellowed. "We found this just now at the end of the hall, hanging on a hook." "So?" she asked. "It wasn't dusty," Torres said. "And," he cleared his throat, "it had condensation inside. Like someone had been breathing into it." Her stomach turned cold. Before she could respond, the hospital lights flickered. Twice. Then cut out completely, plunging the entire psychiatric wing into suffocating blackness. Someone in the forensics team shouted. Another cursed. Equipment clattered. "Generators should have kept this place lit," Torres muttered, hand going to his holstered flashlight. Mar already had hers out. But the moment she clicked it on, she froze. There was someone standing at the far end of the hallway. A silhouette. Still motionless in the beam of her light. Wearing what looked like an old-style nurse's uniform. And an ID badge. Mara felt Torres tense beside her. "Detective?" She stepped forward, light steady on the figure. "NYPD, don't move," she barked. The figure didn't. So Mara did. Step by step. But something was wrong. With every step she took forward, the figure didn't seem to grow clearer. It always stayed at the same distance, as if the hallway itself was stretching. Torres whispered, "What the hell?" The hospital lights flickered again. Just once. But long enough. Long enough for the figure to vanish. Mara lifted her walkie. "Unit 17, status on the generator?" "Static." She tried again. "Static." She slowly lowered the walkie. "Torres, stay close." He nodded, hand hovering near his firearm like a useless talisman. They followed the hall to where the figure had stood. No footprints. No movement. No sign anyone had been there. Hanging from a cracked tile wall was an old laminated ID badge. Mara lifted it with gloved fingers. Erin Wren. Registered psychiatric nurse. Briarwood Community Hospital. Her breath caught again. "Wren," Torres said, reading over her shoulder. "Same name on that fresh chart, right?" "Yeah," Mara whispered. "The attending nurse for room 19. "Detective," his voice lowered. "This nurse, she's one of the disappearances tied to the original shutdown, isn't she?" Mara nodded. "She vanished days before the hospital closed. And now her badge shows up here?" "And someone who looked like her," Mara added. He stared at her. "You think it was her?" "No," Mara said firmly. But the denial didn't reach her gut. By 9:40 p.m., they regrouped outside. Fresh air should have helped. It didn't. Torres stood beside her, arms folded as generator techs tested cables and police drones scanned the building's exterior. "You all right?" he asked her. "Fine." "Bullshit." She didn't argue. Torres leaned against the squad car. "You want to tell me why a patient chart with your sister's name is sitting fresh inside a sealed hospital?" "No," Mara said honestly. He waited. She sighed. "Fiona was admitted 3 weeks before Briarwood shut down. They wouldn't tell my family why. They wouldn't tell me anything. She disappeared the week the place closed. And they told me it was suicide." Torres stared. "But they never found her body." "No." She rubbed her temples. "They called it inferred suicide. That's not even a term." "It was for them," she murmured. He kicked a loose stone. "And now room 19 looks like someone walked out last night." Mara nodded. "And wrote in blood." Another nod. "And breathed into an old mask." A third nod. "And maybe is still in there." She didn't answer that one. Instead she said, "We're going back inside." Torres blinked. "Now." "Generators are back. Drone says all levels are stable. And we're missing something." "What?" Her jaw tightened. A nurse doesn't abandon her post unless someone makes her. They re-entered the building through the emergency side door. Crime scene tape fluttered against the metal as the night wind scraped at the eaves. Inside, the generators hummed. Lights flickered back on. The psychiatric wing seemed different. Brighter. Whiter. Almost expectant. Mara led Torres to the nurse's station, where the fresh clipboard still sat. She lifted it again and scanned the reverse side. This time, a second line was beneath the first. Her stomach dropped. It hadn't been there before. She never left. Neither did I. Torres whispered, "That's impossible." Then the PA system crackled overhead. A low, distorted buzz. A woman's voice. So raspy. Close. Too close. Room 19 needs attention. Mara felt every nerve in her body snap tight. Torres whispered, "That's not possible. The PA system is dead." The voice came again. Longer. Sharper. "Nurse Wren, report to room 19, your patient is awake." The lights flickered. Then the hallway door at the end of the psychiatric wing slammed shut by itself. Torres drew his weapon instinctively. "Detective, we need backup." But Mara barely heard him. Her eyes were fixed on the hallway. Because the PA speaker popped one more time, and the voice whispered something she hadn't heard in 19 years. Her name. Come back to us. A scream. Down the hall. Room 19. Human. Alive. Terrified. Mara didn't hesitate. She ran. And whatever was waiting in that room wasn't a memory, wasn't a ghost, and wasn't imaginary. Something, was alive in room 19. And it had waited a very long time for her. The woman behind the glass. Mara sprinted down the long psychiatric hallway, Torres just behind her, their footsteps hammering against the buckled linoleum. The scream that had erupted moments ago still echoed in Mara's ears, a raw, human sound that didn't belong in a sealed hospital abandoned for almost 2 decades. Torres's voice chased her. "Detective, slow down." But she didn't. Couldn't. She'd waited 19 years for answers. Room 19 waited at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar, light spilling into the corridor like a strip of exposed bone. The scream came again. Shorter this time. Throttled. As if someone had clamped a hand over the mouth that made it. Mara skidded to a halt at the doorway, gun drawn. Torres raised his weapon beside her, breathing hard. Mara nodded once. Torres nodded back. She kicked the door open. It slammed against the inside wall with a metallic crack, and the screaming stopped. Dead silence. Mara swept the flashlight beam across the room, heart pounding. The air was colder here, almost refrigerated. Her breath fogged faintly, forming quick, vaporous clouds. Torres whispered, "What the hell?" The bed was overturned, metal frame twisted. Restraint straps dangled like severed tendons. Cabinets hung open, one broken entirely off its hinges. Medical papers littered the floor in a cyclone of disturbed dust. But someone had clearly been here. Recently. "Flash the corners," Mara ordered. Torres moved left, she moved right. Still nothing. Mara crossed to the far side of the room, her beam illuminating the familiar tile wall, the one where they'd found the blood message earlier that night. Now, the wall was clean, completely wiped. No blood, no words, no trace that anything had ever been there. Torres muttered, "That's impossible. We photographed it. It can't just be." A soft scraping sound cut him off. Both detectives snapped toward it. The sound came from behind the large metal privacy screen near the back of the room. The screen, tall and old-style, stood beside the window like a silent sentinel. Its painted surface was chipped and peeling, paint curling like dead skin. Something moved behind it. Slow. Dragging. Torres whispered, "Someone's there." The screen trembled. Mara stepped forward, muscles braced, finger tightening on the trigger. "Briarwood PD," she said, voice steady. "Step out slowly. Hands visible." Another scrape. A whisper. So faint Mara almost thought she imagined it. "Nurse." Torres's jaw clenched. "Hell no." Mara motioned him back, stepping toward the screen. Another whisper. "Please." Her flashlight quivered in her grip. Torres, on my count. He aimed beside her. Ready. 3, she whispered. 2, 1. Mara yanked the screen aside, and her blood ran ice cold. A woman stood there. Thin, gaunt, her hospital gown stained yellow with age. She pressed a trembling hand against the wall, hair hanging tangled around her face. Her skin was ashen, sickly pale, veins visible like faint blue threads. Her eyes, wide, glassy, vacant, reflected the beam of Mara's flashlight, unblinking. Her ID bracelet was still around her wrist. Fiona Hale. Patient ID, 68013. Room 19. Torres whispered, Mara? But Mara couldn't breathe. Her legs turned liquid. Her sister. Her older sister. Fiona. Except Fiona was supposed to be dead. Supposed to have died 19 years ago. Yet the woman standing in front of her. Fiona? Mara whispered. The woman's head twitched sharply at the name, like someone jerking a puppet by a string. Her lips parted. Mara, she rasped. Her voice. Her sister's voice. Mara stumbled forward. Oh my God, Fiona. Torres grabbed her arm. Detective, wait. But she tore free. Tears blurred her vision as she stopped just a foot away from the woman she'd mourned nearly her entire life. Fiona reached out with a shaking hand, hesitant, weak. Mara, she whispered again, voice cracking like brittle glass. Came back. Mara swallowed hard. I never stopped looking for you. Fiona smiled faintly. A fragile, broken smile. A sudden, violent spasm rippled down her body. Her back arched. Fingers curled inwards. Her head snapped upward with a sickening crack. Torres shouted, Get back! Mara jumped away as Fiona collapsed to her knees, seized by a convulsion so brutal it looked unnatural. Her limbs jerked in unnatural angles, mouth trembling as if forming words she couldn't speak. Then she stopped moving. Just stopped. Frozen. Her head slowly lowered. Her eyes stared up at Mara, and she smiled. But this time it wasn't her sister's smile. It was wrong. Twisted. Something wearing the shape of a smile, without any human emotion behind it. Not your sister. The voice wasn't Fiona's. It came from her mouth. But it wasn't her. Mara felt the world tilt. What are you? Torres steadied his aim. Back away now. Fiona, or the thing using Fiona, looked at Torres with wide, dead eyes. She never left, it whispered. Then it reached toward Mara's shoulder, and left a bloody handprint on her jacket. Torres fired. The gunshot exploded through the room. The figure convulsed again, collapsing sideways against the wall with a hollow thud, knees folding beneath her. Mara lunged forward. No, Fiona. She knelt beside the still body, hands trembling. Torres swept the room with his weapon. Detective, careful. Don't touch her until we're sure she's. I have to, Mara snapped. She gently turned Fiona's body to face her, and screamed. It wasn't Fiona. It wasn't anyone. The face was empty. No features beneath the eyes except stretched, unnatural tissue twisted into mock expressions. A face made to resemble Fiona Hale. A face someone had constructed. Or grown. Mara scrambled backward until her back hit the overturned bed. Torres breathed, Jesus Christ. The mask-like face twitched once. Then the entire body convulsed and collapsed inward like dry paper, skin shriveling, limbs sinking into themselves, leaving only the hospital gown and a brittle husk. Torres whispered, what the hell is going on? Mara stood slowly, breath shaking. I don't know, she whispered. But someone wanted me to think that was her. Torres nodded at the gown. Check the bracelet. Mara reached with trembling fingers and lifted the ID bracelet. Patient, not found. Record deleted. Room 19. Torres muttered, This is getting worse by the minute. Mara stared at the cracked ceiling, forcing air into her lungs. Torres, whoever screamed earlier, it wasn't this thing. Someone else is here. He swallowed. You think it's the nurse? Aaron ran. Mara nodded. She didn't vanish. Something happened to her. Torres scanned the hall. But then who or what was that? A decoy? Yes. Mara's voice hardened. A warning. They regrouped outside room 19. Mara leaned against the wall, letting the cool plaster steady her. Torres paced, trying to burn fear into focus. What do you think it was? He finally asked. Mara shook her head. I don't know. A body that old shouldn't even be intact. And it wasn't Fiona. It wasn't even human. A copy? Torres asked. Like, made to look like her? Yes, Mara whispered. To draw me in. Then who screamed? Mara snapped on fresh gloves. We're going to find out. They followed the narrow corridor behind room 19, passing rusted restraints and ancient supply carts. The deeper they moved, the colder the air grew, until their breath fogged like they were walking into winter. Torres checked his watch. Detective, it shouldn't be this cold in an unpowered building. Mara nodded. Then it's not the building. At the end of the corridor was a steel door marked. Authorized staff only. Isolation annex. The scream had come from behind this. Torres tested the handle. Locked. Mara tilted her head. No, listen. Torres pressed his ear to the metal. Then he froze. Breathing, he whispered. Someone is inside. Definitely alive. Mara stepped forward. On 3, she said. Torres braced himself. 1, 2, 3. Mara slammed her shoulder into the door. It burst open, and what they saw inside changed everything. The room wasn't abandoned. It was fully intact. Sterile. Lights worked. Monitors beeped softly. For bags hung from polished racks. Someone had been maintaining this room. Recently. In the center stood a single isolation bed. And lying on it, restrained by fresh bands of leather, was a woman. Alive. Awake. Eyes wide with terror. Her mouth gagged. Tears streaking down her cheeks. And pinned to her hospital gown was a fresh, laminated ID badge. Erin Wren. Registered nurse. Briarwood Community Hospital. Mara stepped closer. The woman thrashed violently, trying to scream behind the gag. Torres' voice trembled. Detective, that's her. The missing nurse. No, Mara whispered. She stared at the terror in the woman's eyes. That's the real Erin Wren. Torres turned pale. Then who was the thing we saw in the hallway? A soft crackle answered him. The PA speaker overhead. Then the same rasping voice spoke. Amused. If the nurse is with you, then who do you think just walked into room 19? Mara's heart stopped. Torres spun toward the hallway. Footsteps echoed outside. Slow, deliberate. Approaching room 19. Mara turned toward the door, breath catching. Someone else was inside the hospital with them. Someone who didn't want them to leave. Someone wearing a hospital gown. Someone wearing her sister's face. Dr. Lena Marlowe did not remember leaving the hospital. She remembered pushing open the stairwell door after the lights went out. She remembered hearing her name whispered from below. She remembered the clang, metal on concrete, something falling, rolling, stopping at her feet. A keyring. Room 19 tagged in flaking red paint. Then, nothing. Now she was in her car, engine running, windshield fogged, hands trembling around the steering wheel. Her watch said 3:47 a.m. The last thing she remembered before waking here was glancing down the stairwell and whispering, "Who's there?" The keyring now sat on the passenger seat. Cold, damp, like it had been submerged in water. Lena's throat tightened. Someone, or something, had given her those keys. She didn't go home. She didn't even think about it. Instead, she drove straight back to Ravenwood State Hospital, the abandoned East Wing. The building sat hunched under the moonlight like a wounded animal, skeletal beams jutting from the roof where decades of storms had torn away the exterior. When she parked, her headlights illuminated something she hadn't noticed before. Footprints. Leading toward the broken emergency exit door of the old wing. She swallowed. Not possible. The dust around this area never held prints. The building's east wing hadn't had power, staff, or maintenance in over 37 years. She followed the prints. Inside, the air was colder, sharp, metallic, tasting faintly of old rainwater and copper pipes. She clicked her flashlight on. The beam shivered across peeling paint, dangling wires, discarded medical carts, and a collapsed gurney. The footprints continued deeper, stopping at the hallway intersection. The same hallway that led toward room 19. Her pulse quickened, her own footsteps sounding too loud. Something flickered. A second beam of light? Eyes. Reflective. Watching. Her flashlight swung up sharply. Nothing. She clenched her jaw and exhaled through her nose. "I'm tired," she whispered, though she knew fatigue couldn't explain everything she'd witnessed in the last 24 hours. She looked down. The footprints ended abruptly. Like whoever, or whatever, made them simply vanished. She lifted the keyring, metal cold against her palm. Then she continued toward room 19. The door looked different at night. Or maybe she had changed. By daylight, the boarded windows and rusted locks seemed merely relics. At night, the door seemed alive, breathing slow, shallow breaths, as if the wood itself remembered every patient who had clawed, screamed, or begged behind it. Lena inserted the key. The lock clicked instantly, smoothly, as if it had been waiting. She hesitated. "You are making a mistake," she muttered to herself. But the alternative, leaving the mysteries to fester, felt worse. She pushed the door open and froze. Room 19 had changed. No dust. No collapsed bed frame. No graffiti. No rotting insulation. Everything was clean. Sterile. Bright overhead lights, not flickering, fully lit. Machines humming. A heart monitor pulsing steadily. And in the bed, a patient. A man. Unmoving. Hooked up to 4 lines, electrodes, nasal cannulas, and wires that snaked into machines from decades past. His skin was pale. Almost translucent. His chest rising once, twice. Too slow to be natural. Lena's breath hitched. What the hell? She stepped closer. The patient looked no older than 30. Black hair. Sunken cheeks. A faint scar under the left eye. A number tattooed near his collarbone. Number 10723. She had seen that number before. On the redacted pages from the 1987 incident reports. The same year the East Wing was shut down. The year 8 patients vanished. Her gloved hand rose shakily. She touched his wrist. Cold. Freezing, actually. Like 4 fluid running through him had turned to ice. But then, his eyelids twitched. Lena jerked back. No. He inhaled. Slow. Rattling. Then his eyes opened. And he stared straight at her. For a moment, neither of them moved. His eyes were clouded, like someone who had lived too long in darkness. But they were aware. Tracking. Locking onto Lena's face with unnerving clarity. Her brain scrambled through explanations. Hallucination, dream, stress-induced psychosis, oxygen deprivation, anything. But he whispered, "Doctor?" His voice sounded like torn paper. Lena staggered backward until she hit the metal tray table. Instruments rattled. "Who are you?" she managed. He blinked once, slowly. His lips cracked as he formed the words. "They didn't let me leave." Lena swallowed. "Who didn't?" His gaze shifted toward the ceiling, as if expecting something to descend. "They're still here." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Who's still here?" He exhaled, eyes slipping closed for a second, then opening again with effort. "They locked all of us inside. They said it was for research. For progress." He swallowed, throat muscles weak and shaky. "I was the last." Lena felt nausea rising. Her flashlight, still on, flickered once. The machines flickered too. A hum vibrated through the room, low, mechanical, rhythmic. Like a generator trying to come alive after decades of sleep. Then Lena noticed something. The machines had no power cords. None. Every monitor, pump, and 4 regulator was unplugged. Her heart dropped. "Impossible," she whispered. The man in the bed coughed, a shallow, dry sound that made his ribcage throb visibly under his gown. "They made us sign forms," he said weakly. "Said we were volunteers. But the doors locked from the outside. The windows sealed. The lights shut off one by one, until only this room remained. Lena's head spun. But the hospital closed in 1987, she said, as if logic could anchor her. That was 37 years ago. You can't be alive. He finished. A faint smile crept across his cracked lips. I'm not. Lena's breath caught painfully. He stared at her with hollow certainty. I died in room 19. We all did. But the hospital never released us. The temperature plummeted. Her flashlight flickered, then died. The overhead lights dimmed to a dull, throbbing pulse. The machines beeped faster. 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 The patient's fingers twitched, curling like something inside him was trying to break free. You shouldn't have come here, he whispered. Why? Because once you enter room 19... His head turned sharply, not toward her, but toward the doorway behind her. They see you. Lena spun around. A shadow stood in the doorway. Thin. Impossible to miss. But as soon as her eyes landed on it, it tilted its head. Slow. Deliberate. Curious. Then it stepped forward. Lena sprinted. She didn't wait to see the shadow's face, if it even had one. She barreled out of the room, shoes skidding across the polished tile that hadn't been polished in decades. The hallway lights flickered violently, strobing like faulty emergency lamps. She slammed into the far wall trying to turn the corner. Behind her, she heard it. Footsteps. Not fast. Not slow. Steady. Measured. Heavy enough to echo. Light enough to sound almost eager. Lena darted left, then right, avoiding fallen ceiling tiles and overturned stretchers. She reached the stairwell and yanked the door open. The entire staircase was gone. Just gone. Instead, an empty vertical shaft stretched downward into darkness. The steps had rotted away, or never existed at all. She backed up, shaking. The footsteps grew louder. She ran again. The hallways twisted unnaturally, intersecting in angles she didn't remember existing. A cold draft whispered through the corridor even though no windows here had opened in decades. Her breathing turned ragged. Finally, she found it. The exit door. She shoved her shoulder against it, and it didn't budge. Come on, she screamed, slamming her palm against the metal. Behind her, silence. Too much silence. She turned slowly. The shadow stood at the end of the hallway. Its form wavered, flickering like a projection barely holding together. Arms too long. Head tilted the same way as before. Eyes, if they were eyes, glowing faintly, like embers waiting to flare. Then it raised a hand and pointed at her. Something metallic hit her foot. The keyring. Except she hadn't dropped it. It slid to a stop beside her shoe, as if pushed by an invisible force. The tag glowed faintly red. Room 19. The exit door behind her clicked open. She didn't think. She didn't breathe. She ran, bursting into the cold night air, stumbling across the cracked pavement, collapsing beside her car as tears mixed with sweat and exhaustion. When she looked back, the exit door was closed, and the bare footprints in the dust were gone. Lena didn't drive home. She drove to the police station. She marched to the front desk, disheveled, shaking, clutching the keyring in her hand like a lifeline. I need to report something, she said. The officer looked up. At 4 in the morning? This can't wait. He sighed, pulled a form toward him. All right, ma'am. What's the emergency? Lena leaned in. There's someone alive inside Ravenwood's East Wing. His pen paused. The East Wing has been condemned for 30 years. I know, she said urgently. But I saw him. A patient. Hooked up to machines. Breathing. Talking. She stopped herself before mentioning shadows and impossibilities. The officer sat up, brow furrowed. What did he say? Her voice cracked. He said they never let him leave. The officer's expression changed subtly, concern mixed with something else. He stood slowly. I need you to wait here, doctor. How do you know I'm a doctor? But he didn't answer. He walked away to a back office and closed the door. Lena waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. When the door opened again, 2 men in dark suits stepped out with the officer behind them. Dr. Marlowe? One said politely. Yes. Who are you? We're with the agency overseeing Ravenwood's historical case materials. We'd like to ask you a few questions. Lena stood quickly. No. I'm not answering anything until someone checks that building. There is a patient. There are no patients, the man in the suit interrupted gently. Ravenwood was emptied in 1987. Every room, every record, every individual accounted for. No, Lena insisted. You don't understand. Room 19. There is no room 19, he said. Her mouth went dry. I was just there. The man stepped closer, voice lowering. Dr. Marlowe. The East Wing was demolished in 1991. Lena stared at him. That isn't possible. He gestured for her to sit. Let's talk about what you think you saw. Her heartbeat thundered. What she thought she saw. She reached into her pocket. And froze. The keys were gone. Her hand shook violently. The man's gaze flicked toward her empty palm. Something wrong, doctor? She stepped back. You're lying, she whispered. Both men moved forward. The officer locked the station door. Dr. Marlowe, the second man said calmly. You need to come with us. Lena bolted for the exit door. The officer grabbed her arm. She twisted free, pushed past the counter, shoved open the emergency exit, and sprinted into the parking lot. Behind her, she heard them calling her name. But she didn't stop running. Not until she reached her car, fumbled with the keys, threw herself inside, and tore out of the parking lot as fast as the engine could handle. She didn't breathe until she reached the edge of town. Only then did she stop the car. Only then did she unlock her fingers from the steering wheel and let her muscles relax. Only then did she notice something resting on her passenger seat. Cold, russet. A keyring, with one tag, room 19, and a fresh smear of wet fingerprints across the metal. Not hers. The patient's. The tapes they tried to bury. The sun rose in slow, muted streaks of orange behind the horizon, but Dr. Lena Marlowe felt no warmth from it. She had pulled over on the shoulder of an empty service road, somewhere between Ravenwood and the next town, but she didn't remember driving the last several miles. Her heartbeat slowed from a frantic sprint to a trembling crawl. The keyring sat innocently on the passenger seat beside her. Rusted steel. Chipped red tag. The faded stencil. Room 19. But the worst part wasn't the key itself. It was the fingerprints. Still fresh. Still damp. Still smelling faintly of antiseptic and something else. Something metallic. Wrong. She stared at them, her head throbbing. He touched this, she whispered. Her mind replayed the patient's dead calm voice from the night before. I'm not alive. Her vision blurred with exhaustion and panic. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against the steering wheel. She needed answers. Real answers, not mysterious federal suits telling her the building didn't exist, not contradictory records, not hallucinations or dreams or whatever this was supposed to be. And she knew exactly who had them. Harriet Vale. The nurse who had worked the night shift the exact year Ravenwood's East Wing shut down. The woman who had abruptly quit and moved off-grid 2 months later. The woman who had been the last person to log an entry about room 19. Harriet was still alive. Barely, if the rumors were true. She lived alone, deep in the woods outside Hensworth County, in a collapsing farmhouse with no neighbors for miles. And Harriet had refused interviews for decades. But Lena didn't have a choice anymore. She started the car, gripped the wheel with both hands, and pressed the gas. She had a feeling Harriet would answer the door today, whether she wanted to or not. The drive took nearly an hour, winding through thick forest. Lena's nerves tightened as branches scraped along her car like fingernails dragging down sheet metal. Eventually, she reached the long, overgrown driveway. Harriet Vale's house looked almost swallowed by the wilderness. A sagging porch. Windows boarded from the inside. A chimney crumbling like gravel. A rusted, "No trespassing" sign half buried in dead leaves. But smoke curled from the chimney. Someone was home. As Lena stepped out, her foot crunched something under the leaves. She crouched and brushed them aside. Footprints. Several. But, child-sized. Her breath hitched painfully. No, oh no. She followed them with her eyes. They circled the house. Some prints were fresh, others older, filled with rainwater. Some darted toward the woods. Some ended abruptly, with no continuation, like someone had stepped forward and vanished. But she forced herself to ignore them. She climbed the porch steps, each one groaning under her weight, and knocked. Nothing. She knocked again. After a long moment, bolts scraped from the inside. Then a chain rattled. Then the door opened an inch. A tired, sunken face peered through the crack. "Go away," Harriet Vale said. Her voice was brittle but sharp. Lena swallowed. "Miss Vale, I'm a doctor. I work at... I know who you are." Harriet's pale eyes flicked to the keyring in Lena's hand. "And I know why you're here." Lena stiffened. Harriet sighed heavily and closed her eyes. "I told them this would happen someday. They didn't listen." She shut the door. Lena's panic rose. "Harriet, please." The door swung open again, wider this time. Harriet's expression had changed. She looked terrified. "Come inside," she whispered. "And don't look behind you." Lena's chest tightened. "Don't look behind you." She didn't. She stepped inside, and Harriet slammed the door shut, locking every bolt, latching 3 chains, and pushing a heavy dresser against it like this had been practiced many times. Harriet moved quickly, hunched, always glancing at the windows even though everyone was boarded. "They watch the house sometimes," she muttered. "They don't come in, but they watch." Lena's voice was thin. "Who?" Harriet stared at her for a long moment. "You've already seen them." A shiver swept through Lena's entire spine. The shadow in the hallway. The head tilt. The pointing. The footprints. "Sit," Harriet said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table. Lena sat. Harriet didn't. She closed a small cabinet and pulled out something wrapped in an old dish towel. She unwrapped it slowly. A cassette tape. Label handwritten, shaky. R19, final shift, March 12, 87. Lena's heart slammed. Harriet set it on the table like something radioactive. "You don't touch that," she warned. "You listen. But you don't touch." "What's on it?" Lena asked. Harriet sank slowly into the chair across from her. "Evidence," she whispered. "The kind that ruins people. The kind they'd kill to bury." She grabbed an old tape recorder from a cupboard, inserted the cassette, and pressed play. The tape hissed, crackled. Then a voice emerged, younger, nervous, familiar. Harriet's voice. "Night shift, 11:12 p.m. room checks complete. Room 19 secure." More static. 11:47 p.m. patient 10723 complaining of cold. Temp sensors malfunctioning again. East wing generators losing power. Lena leaned closer. Harriet's hands trembled visibly as she listened. Another entry on the tape. 12:03 a.m. lights flickering. Hearing movement in the west corridor. Logged as potential intruder. Sending request for security. A long pause. An audible shuffling sound on the tape. Breathing. 12:15 a.m. security has not responded. I repeat, no response. I'm hearing the tapping from inside room 19. Lena's breath caught. The next sound on the tape was unmistakable. So rhythmic, like fingernails on glass. Then Harriet's younger voice. Room 19 is sealed from the outside. No one should be inside. A loud slam jolted both women at the table. The tape crackled violently, as if distorted by proximity to something electromagnetic. Harriet's voice returned, panic now. "Oh God, it's behind the door. Something's wrong with the lights." Then a deep, unnatural hum filled the tape. Mechanical. Vibrating. The same tone Lena had heard last night. Harriet shut off the recorder instantly. Silence swallowed the room. Lena exhaled shakily. "That sound, I heard it too. Last night." Harriet rubbed her temples. "You saw patient 10723, didn't you?" Lena nodded silently. Harriet's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Truly. Because if you saw him, then they've already marked you." Lena leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." What really happened in room 19? Harriet's voice dropped to a trembling whisper. They were experimenting. On what? On silence. Lena blinked. Silence. Harriet nodded slowly. Human sensory deprivation. Total. The kind that collapses the mind. Removes identity. Erases sense of time, sound, feeling. They wanted to know how long a human consciousness could last suspended between life and death without external stimuli. Her eyes glazed over with old horror. They called it the silence threshold. Lena's stomach turned. Harriet continued, voice cracking. They sealed 8 patients inside the East Wing. No light, no sound, no contact. They said it would last 48 hours. Lena swallowed. And? Harriet shook her head. It lasted 216 days. Lena's blood ran cold. That's impossible. Nothing about room 19 is possible, Harriet whispered. Not anymore. She pushed the tape recorder toward Lena. That hum you heard on the tape? That wasn't a machine. It was them. The patients. No, Harriet shivered violently. Not after what they became. A long silence stretched between them. Lena finally spoke. The patient I saw, 10,723. He said he died in room 19. Harriet closed her eyes. He did. Then how was he alive? Harriet didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice sounded hollow. They never left the silence. Lena frowned. What does that even mean? Harriet's fingers dug into the table's wooden edge. The body can die, she whispered. But the mind, under that level of deprivation, doesn't pass on. Lena felt her throat tighten painfully. What happens to it? Harriet lifted her eyes, and in them was an exhaustion decades old. It lingers, stuck on the threshold. Not living, not dead, not human. Lena's skin crawled. Harriet stood suddenly. You need to leave. Now. Lena stayed seated. Harriet, you're still thinking this is something you can fix, Harriet snapped. It's not. The moment the patient looked at you, you were claimed. Lena flinched. The shadow's glowing eyes. The pointing finger. The footsteps. Claimed. I'm not leaving until you tell me how to stop this, Lena said firmly. Harriet stared at her for a long, strained moment. Then something outside creaked. Both women froze. A slow, drawn-out groan of weight shifting on old wood. Like someone stepping onto the porch. Harriet's eyes widened with terror. No, not now. Not here. Another footstep. Then a dragging sound. Then a faint, deliberate tapping. Like fingernails on wood. Right outside the front door. Lena's stomach dropped. The same rhythm from the tape. Harriet backed away from the windows, voice trembling. They found you. Lena stood. Who? Harriet's whisper was barely a breath. The ones who never left room 19. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. Lena reached for her phone, no signal. The doorknob turned. Slowly, deliberately. The bolts rattled. Harriet grabbed Lena's arm with shocking force. Don't move. Don't breathe. But movement appeared at the boarded window. A shape. Slender. Tilted head. Glowing eyes. Another shape joined it. Then another. They pressed their faces against the cracks in the boarded planks. Watching. Lena's pulse hammered. They shouldn't be able to leave the hospital, she whispered. Harriet shook her head, tears spilling. They don't leave the silence. Anywhere the silence reaches, they follow. The tapping turned into pounding. A voice. Distorted. Layered. Doctor? Lena's entire body locked up. It was the patient's voice. The same whisper. The same torn paper rasp. Open the door. Harriet covered her ears, shaking violently. No. No, they can't speak outside the threshold. They can't. But the voice returned, stronger. Let us in. Lena stepped backward until she hit the kitchen counter. And her hand brushed something metal. A key. A rusted key. The one she thought she left in the car. She stared at it, breath shaking. The tag read, Room 19, Entry. And underneath it, fresh fingerprints being formed, appearing right before her eyes, as if someone invisible was holding the key from the other side. Lena's voice trembled. "Harriet, what do I do?" Harriet finally looked at her, and for the first time, Lena saw true hopelessness. "You can't close a door that leads nowhere," Harriet whispered. The pounding on the front door shook the house. The boards splintered. The shadows outside swelled, merging. And the voice grew louder. "Doctor?" The pounding at Harriet's front door rattled the entire frame, shaking dust from the ceiling and sending tiny splinters skipping across the floorboards. Lena flinched with every impact. It felt like a heartbeat, one that belonged to something not human, pulsing right through the walls. Harriet gripped her wrist with trembling fingers. "Don't let go of me," she whispered. "No matter what you hear, no matter what they say, don't let go." Lena nodded, but her eyes were locked on the door. The boards that Harriet had nailed across the windows were bending inward. Something long and thin pressed through one of the cracks, a shadowed fingertip, impossibly elongated, curling like a beckoning hook. Then the voice came again. "Doctor." It vibrated through the glass, through the wood, through Lena's bones. Harriet grabbed the tape recorder from the table and slammed it into a drawer as if hiding it could make the house safer. "They're not supposed to be able to come this far," she murmured. "Not outside that building. Not outside the threshold." "What is the threshold?" Lena whispered. Harriet turned slowly toward her, eyes hollow and ancient with fear. "It's the barrier between their silence and our world. As long as the threshold holds, they're trapped." She swallowed. "But thresholds weaken when someone opens them." She stared pointedly at the rusted key in Lena's hand. "You gave them a way out." The house shook as something slammed against the boarded window with enough force to crack the wood. A sliver of pale, finger-like bone poked through before retracting again. Lena's breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. "Harriet, if they get in." "They won't," Harriet said, but her voice was thin. "Not yet." The pounding suddenly stopped. Silence swallowed the air. Thick, heavy, wrong. The hairs rose along Lena's arms. A deep cold pressed against her from all sides, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees without warning. Harriet grabbed Lena's wrist again. "Don't move." Lena froze. Not the boards. Not the shadows. Not the door. But the air itself felt aware. Listening. A single sound broke through the suffocating quiet. Footstep. From inside the house. Lena's blood turned to ice. Harriet's breath hitched sharply. "No," she whispered. "They can't be." Another footstep. Closer. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Lena turned her head toward the hallway. Nothing was there. But something felt there. Standing just beyond sight. She squeezed Harriet's arm. "What do we do?" Before Harriet could answer, the lights flickered once, then went out. Total darkness. Lena grabbed at the counter with her free hand. The darkness was so complete it felt thick, like a wet cloth pressed over her face. Harriet's nails dug into her skin. "Don't speak. Don't make a sound." But the house was no longer silent. A low hum began, the same mechanical, vibrating tone from the tape. It rippled through the floorboards, through the walls, through Lena's teeth. Then a whisper, inches from her ear. "Doctor?" She jerked and stumbled backward, grabbing blindly for Harriet, but her hand found only empty air. "Harriet?" Lena hissed. No answer. "Harriet?" The hum grew louder. The darkness deepened, pressing in tight. A cold hand closed gently around her wrist. Lena's entire body seized. But the hand didn't pull. It guided, leading her through the darkness. Her voice cracked. "Harriet, is that you?" No answer. The hand tightened. A flare of white erupted, blinding and disorienting. The world snapped back into view. Lena gasped. She was no longer in Harriet's kitchen. She was in the East Wing corridor of Ravenwood Hospital. But it wasn't abandoned. Not like the videos. Not like her nightmare. It looked new. Clean white tiles. Shiny floors. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Clipboards hanging neatly on walls. Nurses passing by without noticing her. Harriet was nowhere in sight. Lena stumbled backward. No. No, this isn't real. This isn't real. But everything looked solid. Tangible. She smelled disinfectant. Heard distant voices. Footsteps. The thump of a cart's wheels. She turned toward a group of nurses. Excuse me. None reacted. She stepped directly into their path. They passed through her. Not like walking through a ghost, but like watching a recording she couldn't touch. A memory. A reconstruction. A prison. She wasn't in the past. She wasn't in the present. She was inside the threshold. A space between. The corridor lights flickered. The hum returned, vibrating the ceiling panels. Then Lena saw it. At the far end of the hall, room 19's door. Stainless steel. Bolts sealed from the outside. Something moved behind the door's glass window. A silhouette. Human-shaped, but too tall. Too still. The silhouette turned, and its eyes glowed white. Lena staggered backward, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through her ribs. No. No, please. The lights blew out. Darkness swallowed everything again. A second later, she was slammed back into Harriet's kitchen, collapsing onto the floor. Her breath heaved. Sweat clung to her skin. Harriet was crouched beside her, shaking her shoulders. Lena. Lena. Lena gasped and clung to her. They showed me the wing. It wasn't abandoned. I saw. Harriet pulled her into a tight embrace, shushing her. They dragged you into the threshold. They're strong there. Too strong. Lena's chest heaved as she tried to regain her breath. Harriet, I saw room 19. I saw someone inside. Harriet stiffened. What did he look like? Tall. Wrong. Eyes glowing. Lena swallowed hard. He looked at me. Harriet let out a shaky breath. Then they know exactly where you are. And they know your voice now. The pounding resumed, violently. Lena jumped, but Harriet grabbed her by the shoulders. Listen to me. You have one chance to survive this. How? Lena demanded. Harriet pulled her to her feet, grabbed a dusty duffel bag from under the sink, and threw it onto the table. Inside were flashlights, old patient files, a stack of cassette tapes, a rusted metal device shaped like a lantern, a coil of thick black wire. What is all this? Harriet zipped the bag. Tools. For what? Harriet looked at her, face pale but resolute. To go back to Ravenwood. Lena blinked. You want us to go back? To the hospital? Yes. That's where they are. Harriet shook her head. No. That's where they're trapped. The front door cracked inward. A long, thin hand slid through the gap, its joints bending backward like a marionette's. The voice seeped through again, distorted and layered. Tell me back. Lena recoiled. Harriet grabbed her arm. Lena, the silence follows anyone they mark. Your only chance to stop this is to confront it at the source. You mean, room 19? Lena whispered. Harriet nodded once. And you're coming with me? Lena asked. Harriet's eyes glistened with fear. If I don't, you won't make it 5 steps inside that building. Another board snapped off the window. Pale fingers curled around the broken slat. The shadows outside thickened, merging into a tall, shifting mass. Harriet yanked the bag over her shoulder. We have to leave. Now. Lena hesitated, staring back at the creeping figure. Why aren't they breaking in? Why not just take us? Harriet answered without looking. Because they don't want to drag you back. She met Lena's eyes. They want you to walk there on your own. The implication hit Lena like a blow. This wasn't a chase. It was an invitation. Harriet grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. Don't look at them. Don't listen. Just move. Lena followed, every nerve in her body screaming. As they reached the back door, Lena heard it, a whisper directly behind her, as if lips were brushing the back of her neck. Doctor? She froze. Harriet yanked her hard. Don't listen. They burst out the back, sprinting through tangled weeds and dead leaves. The forest swallowed them immediately, thick branches scraping their clothes. Behind them, the house groaned as the front door finally gave way. But the shadows didn't chase. They watched. Silent. Waiting. Harriet didn't stop running until they reached the car. She shoved the bag into the back seat, climbed in, and fumbled for the keys. Lena, breathless, collapsed into the passenger seat. Harriet turned the ignition. The engine roared. "We're going to Ravenwood," she said, gripping the wheel tightly. "Now." Harriet nodded, eyes locked ahead. "Because if we don't face them before sunset..." She swallowed hard. "The threshold will pull you in completely." Lena's breath hitched. "And if it does?" Harriet's hands tightened. "You won't come back. Not as yourself." The car sped down the dirt path, leaving the broken house behind, and the shadows watching from the trees. The tapes they weren't supposed to find. The storm that had threatened all afternoon finally broke open above Briarwood just past 9 p.m., unleashing sheets of rain thick enough to slap sideways against the windows of the sheriff's station. Every flash of lightning lit the walls in harsh white bursts. The whole place felt like it was holding its breath. Half the staff had gone home early, the radios were glitching from static, and the generator had kicked twice, warning that the power grid wasn't handling the weather well. Dr. Lena Vale sat in interview room B with her hands wrapped around a paper cup of instant coffee she wasn't drinking. She'd stopped pacing only because her legs couldn't take it anymore. Across from her, Sheriff Joel Hardacre read over the written summary she'd handed him 20 minutes ago. He hadn't spoken in 7. Not a word. Not a reaction. Not even the twitch he got in his jaw whenever he was stressed. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes it feel like the entire world has pulled back from you. Finally, he closed the packet of papers and exhaled, a slow, shaky sound he clearly didn't want her to see. "Lena," he said quietly, "if what you're claiming is true, it means every single thing we thought we knew about Briarwood Hospital is wrong." She nodded once. "Yes. And that a patient who allegedly died 19 years ago," he tapped the folder with a finger, "still thinks she's being treated." Lena stared down at her cooling coffee. "Still thinks she's not allowed to leave." Hardacre leaned back in his chair. "We need proof." "I know." Lightning cracked outside so violently that the lights flickered overhead. They steadied after a second, but the effect left both of them rattled. Hardacre stood. "Come with me." "Where?" she asked. "To the evidence room." The evidence room. Sheriff Hardacre punched in the code that unlocked the double-bolted steel door. A gust of cold, metallic air greeted them. Evidence rooms always seemed colder than the rest of the station, like the items inside remembered things that chilled the skin. Rows of shelves ran deep, stacked with boxes labeled by case numbers. Hardacre marched down the back aisle, scanning the labels until he reached a cluster of older cases dating back to 2003 and 2004. There was Briarwood Closure, 2004, Archive Storage. Box 7 of 14. He pulled it down, set it on the metal table, and lifted the lid. Inside were 3 items. A sealed hospital logbook. A set of Polaroids of the psych wing. A small cardboard box labeled Patient Media, Confidential. Hardacre slid the last item toward Lena. "I didn't know this was here," he admitted. "These boxes were sealed before I became sheriff." Lena opened the cardboard tab. Inside were 12 VHS tapes. "That's it." Each labeled by hand in a tight, blocky nurse's handwriting. Arm 1901. Arm 1902. Arm 1903. Arm 1904. Room 19. Patient logs. The air left Lena's lungs. "These are patient observation recordings," she whispered. The hospital was required to keep them for psychiatric cases involving harm to self or others. Which means they filmed her? Hardacre. If this patient was as severe as the notes suggested, yes. Hardacre grabbed the first tape and looked at Lena. The station still has a functioning VHS player in the old training room. Lena nodded, heart pounding. They carried the tapes down the hall. The training room. It smelled like stale carpet and disuse. A dusty projector screen hung on the wall, and in the corner sat a rolling A/V cart, complete with an old TV and a VHS deck that looked like it hadn't been touched in a decade. Hardacre plugged it in. The machine hummed to life. "You ready?" he asked. "No," Lena admitted. "But we need this." He inserted RM 1901. The TV screen filled with static, then slowly cleared into a grainy black and white video of a psychiatric hospital room. Room 19. It was unmistakable. Metal bed. Thin sheet. One chair. One tray table. A barred window that showed only a slice of empty sky. The timestamp, May 12, 2004, 2:13 a.m. The camera seemed fixed in the upper right corner. No sound, but the image alone made Lena swallow hard. A girl sat on the bed. She looked no older than 19. Thin. Hair falling over one eye. Knees pulled to her chest like she was bracing for a blow. She was rocking slightly. Slow. Mechanical. Lena whispered, "That's her." Hardacre glanced at her. "Patient, eh?" "Yes." The girl kept rocking, her head tilted slightly toward the door, listening for something. The video ran for 2 minutes of stillness. The girl stopped rocking. She lifted her head, slowly, deliberately, and stared straight into the camera. Hardacre stiffened. "How did she know where the camera was?" he murmured. "It doesn't matter," Lena said, voice unsteady. "Watch." The girl's lips parted. Silent footage couldn't carry sound, but her mouth clearly formed words. One sentence. Over and over. Again and again. The same phrase repeated. "Please don't leave me here." Lena felt every hair on her arms rise. Hardacre hit stop. "We need to see the next one." Timestamp, May 13, 2004, 3:09 a.m. The same room. The same girl. But now she was pacing, fast, frantic, rubbing the inside of her arm like she was trying to erase something burned into her skin. She turned sharply, moved to the door, pressed her ear to it. Then her head whipped toward the camera again. She ran toward it. The screen shook violently. She had climbed onto the tray table and was reaching toward the lens, fingers spread, nails broken. She mouthed something again. Different words this time. Shorter. Sharper. "He's coming." Hardacre exhaled slowly. "Jesus." "This must have been right before she died," Lena said. He didn't disagree. He just fast-forwarded to tape 3. Tape 3. Timestamp, May 14, 2004, 3:11 a.m. The door to room 19 was open. Just slightly. The girl was standing in the center of the room, still facing away from the camera. Hardacre frowned. "Why is the door open? That violates protocol." Lena didn't answer. Her stomach felt hollow. The girl slowly lifted her arm and pointed at the doorway. Then she turned toward the camera, motionless, expression blank. Her mouth didn't move this time, but her eyes did something far worse. They shifted, as if looking beyond the camera, past it, through it, like she was seeing into the room where Lena and Hardacre sat. Lena whispered, This is impossible. She can't be." Then the tape cut to static. Hardacre hit eject. Tape 4. Timestamp, May 16, 2004, 4:02 a.m. The room was empty. Bed neatly made. Chair pushed in. Lights off. Nothing unusual. A shadow crossed the far wall. Not a human silhouette. Something slimmer, taller, as if the shadow of a person had been stretched upward like soft clay. Lena felt a cold wave pass through her chest. The shadow paused, then twisted, bent backward in a way no body could. The tape ended abruptly. Hardacre didn't speak, just loaded tape 5 with a face that had lost all color. Tape 5. Timestamp, May 17, 2004, 12:47 a.m. The room was still empty, but the door was wide open now. A nurse entered. Her badge reflected the light, but the image was too grainy to read the name. She looked nervous. She checked the window first, then the closet. The return to Briarwood. Rain hammered the windshield like handfuls of thrown gravel as the sheriff's vehicle cut through the dark highway leading out of town. The wipers struggled to keep up with the storm, smearing streaks across the glass with every swipe. Thunder cracked overhead in rolling waves. Hardacre's knuckles were bone white around the steering wheel. Dr. Lena Vale sat in the passenger seat, still shaken from the voices on the radio. She kept glancing at the evidence box wedged between her feet, tape 12 lying on top like an artifact that should never have been unearthed. Her pulse throbbed at the base of her throat. "We shouldn't be going back there during a storm," she muttered, but her voice sounded far away, like she was speaking through someone else's mouth. Hardacre didn't look at her. Whatever called us on that radio was inside the station. It could have been interference. You know damn well it wasn't interference. Lena fell silent. Because he was right. Nothing about that voice, neither of the voices, had been natural. They turned onto the old service road leading to Briarwood Hospital. The trees on either side swayed violently, bending under wind pressure. Fallen branches forced Hardacre to maneuver in sharp angles. Then the headlights hit it. The hospital. Massive. And alive with the storm. Briarwood's crumbling facade loomed like a gargantuan shadow in the rain-slashed night. Windows were boarded up. The roof sagged in one corner where age and neglect had claimed the beams. The psychiatric wing jutted out on the left like a long, crooked arm, where room 19 waited. Hardacre parked near the rusted gates, killed the engine, and grabbed his flashlight. "Stay close," he said. Lena nodded, pulling her coat tighter. Her breath fogged in the frigid air as she stepped into the rain. It soaked her within seconds. They pushed through the warped gate, metal screeching against metal. The path to the main entrance felt longer tonight. The storm made the air sharp, biting, as if the hospital exhaled cold from its broken windows. "Did it always feel this wrong?" Lena whispered. "No," Hardacre said. "It feels worse." The front doors hung crookedly on broken hinges. They slipped inside, flashlights cutting through darkness thick as smoke. The sound of rain muffled instantly behind the concrete walls. The interior was silent. Too silent. Lena felt a pressure in her ears, a sensation like being underwater. Her heartbeat became painfully loud. Hardacre led the way, boots crunching on loose plaster. Their flashlights swept across. Collapsed ceiling tiles. Peeling wallpaper. Discarded stretchers. Medical forms strewn like fallen leaves. Everything exactly as they'd seen before, but different somehow. More disturbed. More unsettled. As if the building had shifted while they were gone. They reached the stairwell leading to the psych wing. Hardacre paused, shining his light up the steps. The beam caught something wet pooled on the top landing. He frowned. "Is that water?" Lena's stomach dropped. "No, it's too thick." They climbed slowly. At the landing, the beam revealed a long smear trailing down the corridor, dark, glossy red. Not blood. Not exactly. It glistened like something between blood and oil. Hardacre crouched, touched it with gloved fingertips. "It's warm." Lena swallowed hard. "Let's keep moving." They followed the smear deeper into the psychiatric corridor. The storm thundered above them, but inside the air felt unnaturally still, like the building held its breath. The deeper they walked, the colder it became. Hardacre stopped at the metal door with the faded stencil. "Psychiatric wing, authorized staff only." Lena's pulse spiked. Room 19 was only a dozen doors past this point. Hardacre pushed the door open, metal echoing down the dark hallway. The psych wing. The corridor stretched long and straight, lined with rooms on both sides. Their flashlights illuminated. Numbers painted above each door. Peeling paint. Shuttered observation windows. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The door halfway down the hall, the one that had been chained shut 2 days ago, was now wide open. Room 19. Hardacre lifted his gun instinctively. "Someone's already in here." Lena's voice trembled. "We were the only ones who knew we were coming." "That's what scares me," Hardacre muttered. He motioned her behind him and advanced down the hall. But then, a faint sound drifted down the corridor. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Like fingernails on metal. Hardacre froze. "You hear that?" Lena nodded, throat dry. It was coming from room 19. The doorway. They stopped outside the room. The tapping continued, faster now. Hardacre held up 3 fingers. 3, 1. He swung into the doorway, flashlight sweeping the room. Empty. Bare bed. Bare floor. Bare walls. Except the tapping hadn't stopped. Because it wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from behind the wall. The far wall. The one that was supposedly solid. Lena's breath left her in a rush. No. She stepped inside despite Hardacre's warning hand. The tapping turned into pounding. Then scraping. A faint voice. A girl's voice. Right behind the wall. Please don't leave me here. Lena staggered backward. The voice wasn't echoing. It was directly behind her ear, separated by only inches, by only thin layers of plaster and concrete. Hardacre grabbed her arm. We're leaving. Now. No, Lena whispered. We came for answers. But before Hardacre could respond, a loud cracking sound echoed through the room. The wall shifted. Not collapsed. Shifted. The plaster bulged outward as if something was pushing from inside. Hardacre dragged Lena out of the doorway. The bulge deepened, then burst. Chunks of plaster exploded outward, dust filling the air. Hardacre shielded Lena. When the dust cleared, there was a hole in the wall. And behind the wall, open space. A hidden passage. Hardacre aimed his flashlight inside. The beam revealed a narrow, dark corridor running parallel behind the rooms. Covering the walls were thousands, tens of thousands, of shallow scratches. Like fingernails. Like someone trapped had clawed endlessly for years. Lena covered her mouth. Those are scratch marks. Hardacre's face hardened. Someone hid a service corridor back here. No, Lena whispered. Someone hid something inside it. They stepped through the hole. The corridor was suffocatingly narrow, barely wide enough for a single person. Dust-laden air hung heavy, smelling of old concrete and stale rot. Their flashlights revealed dried streaks along the floor. More of that dark, blood-like residue. The corridor curved slightly, following the alignment of the rooms on the other side. Lena whispered, "This must have been built before the hospital closed." Or after, Hardacre said grimly. The deeper they walked, the more scratches appeared. Some were fresh. Too fresh. At the far end, their beams caught something on the ground. Lena's breath caught. It was a patient gown. Torn, but unmistakably white with faded blue stripes. Hardacre nudged it with his boot. A wristband fell out. Lena picked it up with trembling fingers. Patient, 2004. Status, deceased. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She wore this, Lena whispered. This is her gown. But how did it get here? Hardacre. He knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it. They pressed on. Then, hesitating, she approached the bed and lifted the thin pillow. Lena leaned closer. Something's under it. The nurse froze. The camera caught her shoulders shaking. And then, she placed something on the tray table. A folded sheet of paper. Hardacre paused the tape. What is that? Open the Polaroids, Lena said quickly. Room 19 had evidence photos. He dug through the box, pulled out the stack. One showed the tray table. With the paper unfolded, Lena lifted it toward the light. In black ink, messy and uneven. Discharge denied. Hardacre exhaled. Tape 6. They watched the rest. 6 through 12. And the deeper the tapes went, the worse the footage became. Tape 6 showed the girl's handprint on the inside of the sealed window, fresh. Tape 7 caught the bed shaking as though someone was still lying in it despite the room being visibly empty. Tape 8 captured the same shadow on the wall, this time bending over the bed like it was watching someone sleep. Tape 9 recorded a nurse screaming, though the video had no audio. Tape 10 showed the girl sitting on the floor again, somehow suddenly back, her hair covering her face. Tape 11 showed her crawling toward the door. Tape 12. Tape 12 didn't show anything. Just darkness. Then a message scratched into the static. You shouldn't watch this. Lena hit stop herself. Hardacre pressed both palms into the table. I've been sheriff for 13 years. I've seen bodies. Scenes. Things I can't forget. But this. It's not possible, Lena finished. No, Hardacre whispered. It's not natural. Lightning cracked again, shaking the room. The power flickered, then went out. Total darkness swallowed them. Lena's breath hitched. Hardacre's radio crackled. Static. Hissing. Then a voice. A girl's voice. So tight. Whispering like she was just inches from the speaker. "Please don't leave me here." Lena grabbed the radio. "Who is this? Identify yourself." The voice didn't respond with a name. Just repeated the same terrible sentence. "Please don't leave me here." Hardacre snatched the radio back, his knuckles white. And then, a second voice overlapped it. What? Distorted. A voice that didn't sound human. "He's coming." The radio cut off. Lena's heart slammed hard against her ribs. Hardacre swallowed. "We're going back to that hospital. Tonight." "There's a storm," Lena whispered. "I don't care." Lightning illuminated the training room for half a second. Just long enough for Lena to see the reflection in the dark TV screen. Room 19. The girl on the bed. Staring at them. The screen went black again. Hardacre grabbed his coat. "Gear up. We're leaving in 5. Lena forced herself to breathe. But one thought echoed louder than the storm raging outside. Room 19 hadn't just recorded its past. It was watching its present. And whatever was in that room was awake. The tunnel opened into a small square chamber, maybe a maintenance access room long forgotten. Hardacre swept his flashlight across the space. And froze. "Lena," he said quietly, "don't look." But she stepped beside him anyway. The chamber walls were covered with drawings. Hundreds of them. All made with charcoal, smeared dirt, and something darker. The drawings were frantic, childlike, and terrifying. Figures with elongated limbs. Figures stretching across ceilings. Figures hovering over hospital beds. Figures looming behind nurses. And in every drawing, every single one, a girl. Knees pulled to her chest. Hair covering her face. Mouth forming silent screams. Patient A. Lena felt her vision tunnel. Hardacre moved the flashlight to the opposite wall. There, written over and over, in jagged strokes. "Discharge denied. Discharge denied. Discharge denied." A final line written alone, bigger than all the others. "He still lives here." A sound drifted through the chamber. So, what? A slow inhale. Right behind them. Hardacre whirled around, flashlight shaking. Nothing. Just darkness. Then the inhale came again. This time from the tunnel. Lena grabbed his arm. "Hardacre." A faint glow appeared at the far end of the corridor. What? Flickering. Light from room 19. But no lights were working in Briarwood. The glow moved. Slowly. Like someone carrying a lantern. Coming closer. Hardacre raised his gun. "Do not move." The light paused. Then blinked out. Total darkness. A whisper. Soft and close. "Please don't leave me here." Lena's scream stuck in her throat. Hardacre grabbed her hand. "Run." They tore down the narrow corridor. The darkness behind them erupted with the sound of scraping, fast, violent scraping, as if dozens of fingernails dragged across concrete in pursuit. Lena stumbled, but Hardacre yanked her forward. They burst out of the hole into room 19. The scraping stopped. Silence. Absolute. Hardacre didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lena's arm and hauled her into the hallway. They sprinted toward the stairwell, breaths ragged and burning. As they reached the end of the hall, a loud metallic slam echoed behind them. Room 19's door had shut by itself. Hardacre stopped just long enough to look back. The number on the door was glowing faintly in the dark. Not painted. Glowing. Lena whispered shakily, "Hardacre, that room isn't empty." It never was. He nodded once, jaw clenched. "I know." Back outside, the storm had only grown worse. Lightning split the sky as they ran toward the sheriff's vehicle. Hardacre shoved the doors open and climbed inside. Lena collapsed against the seat, gasping. Hardacre started the engine. But before he could drive, Lena heard something. A soft static crackle. Coming from the sheriff's radio. The same crackle from the tapes. Then the girl's voice whispered through the speaker. "He's out." The radio cut to static, and the storm swallowed the road in darkness. The final night in room 19. The storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked above the abandoned hospital as Detective Mara Holt and Dr. Alex Rains stepped through the warped entrance doors, flashlights cutting through the stale darkness. The air smelled of mildew, rust, and something older, something that had lingered far before the building was condemned. The message Alex had received, scrawled in jagged handwriting on the back of an old medical chart, still burned in his pocket. If you want the truth, come tonight. Come alone. Room 19. Except they hadn't come alone. They came together because neither trusted anything connected to this place, not after what they'd learned about the patient who never left, not after the disappearances, not after the tapes. And especially not after realizing the patient wasn't a myth. He was real, or had been. But then who, or what, was trying to reach them now? The hallway of returned memories. The beam of Mara's flashlight flickered. The hallway stretched before them, a long corridor lined with peeling paint that curled like dry skin. Every sound echoed, dripping water, the groan of shifting pipes, the soft hiss of wind threading through broken windows. Alex stopped at a familiar tiled section of the wall. "This is where the nurses saw him last," he whispered. "The night he disappeared." Mara's voice remained steady, but her eyes stayed on the darkness ahead. "And where your father lost his mind." Alex swallowed. The truth was harsher than her tone. His father, Dr. William Rains, had been the attending physician assigned to patient 19, the man with no name, no records, and no family. A man the hospital staff whispered about. A man who never slept. A man who watched. A man who vanished on the same night 3 patients died in their beds without explanation. Alex brushed dust from a rusted door label. "Wardsey Intensive Care." "This place feels different," Mara whispered. "It's because it remembers," Alex replied. His voice didn't sound like his own. The first sign. The temperature dropped as they approached the turn toward the psychiatric wing. Frost bloomed across Alex's flashlight. Mara exhaled, watching her breath fog in the air. "That shouldn't be possible," she murmured. "It means he's awake," a voice whispered behind them. Mara spun, gun raised. No one stood there. Only the dark corridor. But Alex recognized the voice. His father's. "Keep moving," Mara urged. He did. But he didn't tell her what he heard next. "He's waiting for you." Behind the sealed door. They stopped outside a heavy metal door chained shut with hospital restraints, leather straps, frayed but still holding. Alex's skin prickled. This wasn't here before. Mara tugged one of the straps. They were trying to keep something inside. "No," Alex said softly. "They were trying to keep him out." Thunder boomed overhead as a gust of cold air pushed the door inward, even though it was still tightly bound. The restraints creaked as if something were pulling from the other side. Mara stepped back. "What did your father say about this wing?" she asked. Alex hesitated. "He said it's where the patient liked to walk when he left his room." "Left? How?" Alex finally met her eyes. "He didn't use doors. He learned to slip between places. The hospital called it delusion, but my father believed it. He said the patient moved like shadow, like memory. He could be anywhere. Everywhere." Mara steadied herself. "That's impossible." "Then explain the tapes." Mara had watched them, grainy, old security footage where the patient appeared to stand behind nurses who swore he wasn't there, or pass through the corner of a frame no camera should have captured. Reality bent around room 19. And around him. The stairs that should not exist. They moved deeper until the hallway abruptly dead-ended into a stairwell neither remembered from any blueprint. A new staircase. Impossible. Mara exhaled slowly. "Alex, this wasn't in the building plans." "It wasn't in the real world either," he replied. "Not the one we know." Mara shot him a sharp look. He continued. "This hospital was built on top of an older sanatorium. Before that, it was an orphanage. Before that, a death house," Mara finished. "I read the files." Alex nodded shakily. "And the patient learned how to use the layers." "What layers?" "All the lives this land has lived. All its memories. He learned to walk through them like doors." Mara turned to the staircase. "Then this leads somewhere he wants us to go. The children's ward." The stairs emptied into a wide room lit by flickering ceiling lights. Every bulb pulsed in a slow heartbeat rhythm. Rows of tiny metal beds lined the walls, sheets draped like shrouds. Painted murals of smiling animals peeled from the walls. Foxes without eyes, bears with open mouths, rabbits with cracked painted teeth. This was the children's ward? Mara whispered. No. The children's ward is 3 floors up. So where are we? Before he could answer, movement caught their eyes. A little girl sat on one of the beds. Bare feet. White hospital gown. Hair covering her face. Rocking gently. Mara raised her weapon. Stay back. Alex stepped forward involuntarily. He knew her. He dreamed of her. I've seen her before, he whispered. In the videos. The girl slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were 2 hollow shadows. You're late, she said. The entire room went silent. Who are you? Marist. The girl pointed to Alex. Ask him. He left us here. Mara stiffened. Alex. I don't know her. But he did. He knew exactly who she was. She was the first patient who died the night patient 19 vanished. A girl with no known illness. A girl Alex's father had been treating. The girl's voice slipped into a whisper born from someplace impossible. Room 19 remembers. And so do we. The walls shift. The lights blink twice. On the 3rd blink, the children's ward melted away. Beds dissolved like smoke. Mara grabbed Alex's arm. What the hell is going on? The hospital is choosing what to show us, he said. And why us? Before he could answer, the lights steadied again. They now stood in a long, narrow room. Rust-red tiles. A heavy drain in the center. A tilted metal table with restraints. A surgical theater. Mara's stomach sank. Alex, your father worked here, didn't he? Alex's breath caught. I think this is where he first met the patient. The truth his father hid. A door opened by itself at the far end of the surgical room. Inside was a single metal cabinet. Alex approached slowly, as if drawn by invisible threads. He pried it open. Inside lay a series of old, yellowed folders labeled. Subject 19, do not enter. Mara stepped closer. These are medical files. Alex opened the first one. His father's handwriting spilled across every page. Notes, drawings, unreadable scribbles. And then, the patient does not age. Vitals inconsistent with human parameters. Able to mimic the voices of the dead. Begins to appear even when not physically present. He consumes memory. Page after page, the truth surfaced. This isn't a patient, Mara whispered. This is something else. Alex froze on the last page. A sketch of the patient. Gaunt. Eyes like black wells. And in the margin, something else scribbled in frantic handwriting. He wants my son. Mara felt the blood drain from her face. Alex. He slammed the folder shut. He knew. My father knew the patient wasn't human. He knew he wanted something from me. Why you? Alex shook his head. I don't know. A voice whispered. He does. They turned. The little girl stood in the doorway again. Only now, she looked older. Taller. Her face blurry, shifting like a half-remembered dream. You were chosen, she said softly. Long before your father ever worked here. The thing in room 19. The walls groaned. The floor trembled. A pulse rippled through the building like the heartbeat of something alive. Then the lights dimmed until only a single row flickered, revealing a corridor ahead. A door. Numbered with a rusted, crooked sign. 19. Mara steadied herself. This is it. Alex felt a weight pressing into his chest. As they approached, the temperature dropped so sharply frost etched across the doorframe. A low, almost human sound breathed behind the door. Mara gripped her weapon. Alex reached for the handle. The girl's voice called from behind them. He will show you everything. The door swung inward with a groaning creak. Room 19 was dark. Deeper than darkness. A void. Alex stepped inside, and the world seemed to close around him. Mara followed, but the moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them. The air vanished. Silence deafened.
Footsteps. Slow.
Measured.
Heavy.
A tall figure emerged from the black. Skin stretched too thin. Limbs elongated. Face unreadable. Features shifting like memory struggling to form. The patient who never left. Alex froze as the figure leaned forward, inches from him. A voice echoed, not from its mouth, but inside his skull. "You carry my memory." Alex gasped. "What are you?" It answered with a sound like 100 voices layered together. "I am everything this place has forgotten." Mara raised her gun, but her hand trembled. The patient turned toward her. "You cannot harm what is not here." Suddenly, Alex's mind exploded with images. Flashes of the orphanage, the sanatorium, the first hospital, a child born with no record, a boy abandoned in every lifetime, a presence that grew from neglect, a being formed from all the suffering embedded in the walls. He understood. He wasn't a patient, Alex whispered. He was made by this place. Mara backed away. "You mean?" "He is the hospital. Its memories. Its grief. It's dead." The patient stood over Alex. "You were born here, Alex." His blood ran cold. "That's not possible." But it was. Flashes hit him again. His mother on a hospital bed. Complications. A delivery rushed. Room 19 used as an emergency suite. His newborn cries echoing into the hospital's deepest shadows. And the patient watching. Waiting. Feeding on those first moments. "You imprinted on me," the voices said. "You are the first thing I ever wanted." Mara stepped forward, voice cracking. "Alex, we need to go. Now." But the patient wrapped the room in crushing darkness. "You belong to me." The walls shuddered. The ceiling cracked. Dust rained down. Mara fired a shot. The bullet vanished midair. Alex screamed. A blinding flash burst through the room as the lights exploded simultaneously. The patient recoiled. Mara grabbed Alex's arm. "Run!" The darkness tore like fabric as they sprinted toward the door. The little girl appeared again. Her voice screamed, "Now!" Alex shoved his shoulder against the door. It burst open, and the two of them crashed into the hallway, gasping for air as the entire corridor buckled and shuddered behind them. "Go!" Mara shouted. They ran. Past the shifting rooms. Past the broken staircases. Past the ghosts of memories that weren't theirs. The patient's roar thundered behind them. The hospital convulsed. The exit sign flickered ahead. They burst through the front doors into the storm outside, just as the entire hospital exhaled one final monstrous breath, and every single window shattered outward. Then silence. The lights inside died. Room 19 went still. Forever. Hours later, emergency crews cordoned off the site. Alex sat in the back of an ambulance, blanket around his shoulders, staring at the building's lifeless silhouette. Mara stood beside him. "You think he's gone?" she asked quietly. Alex didn't answer. Because he knew. Buildings don't die. Memories don't die. And the patient. He was both. "Room 19 will reopen somewhere else," Alex whispered. "He'll find a new place to live." Mara's voice trembled. "And you?" Alex finally looked at her. "He marked me. I don't know how or why, but I know he'll come back. Not here. Not now. But one day." The wind howled through broken windows. Something shifted inside the ruins. A faint sound. A whisper. A promise. "I never left." Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll be ready." Alex didn't respond. He simply stared at the hollow entrance of the hospital, at the darkness inside, at the place where he had been born, claimed, and chased by something older than suffering itself. Somewhere deep inside, he knew. The story wasn't over. Not for him. Not for Room 19. Not for the patient who waited in every shadow where memory refused to die.